thank you. I'll give just 5 minutes for any questions to Mr. Tarumbira or Mr. Mshonga.
It's not a question, but I just want to comment on the contribution. All what they said comes to the question of conducive environment. That is the only question we are worried. We can do everything, there are things, but do we have a conducive environment in this country? That's the question. So we should focus on that first, then everything will go along. We were talking about fishing. You know, these lake liquids and whatever dams, the standards have gone down beyond out of control. And you can't expect someone going to start a project of fishing there without first renovating and whatever. And that is the duty of the government. So we want a conducive environment.
Do you want to? Right, I'll take 3 questions and then we'll see who asks yes.
My question is directed to the representative from the Zimbabwe Embassy. What is the Zimbabwean government doing to help people, let's say they want to send some equipment back home to invest? Are they waiving duty or dignity?
Right.
To me, it's actually it's a two-way. It's not a question actually, but it's just a two-way support statement. But also sort of like answering to my lovely lady who's concerned about our beautiful country. The first thing that I'm going to say is that you know, having gone back home just a few months ago and so on, one realized that I'll come back and say the same thing that you've just said now. But we'll keep saying the same thing and expecting the government to say, okay, we want the government to do this. But if we look at ourselves here, we're not getting younger, but we're getting older. So we are actually trying to build for our little ones in the new generation. And it is only our duty to try and push and invest and do whatever we can. Hopefully, also, you know, the government will come in and help in whatever ways they can. But at this point in time, even if we try and say the government, we want them to first build this tank here, then I'll come and pour the water, then we can buy the fishes. You know, why can't we, as he had said, the gentleman said there, form a cooperative or do it yourself, go and build a big dam or tank. Do it yourself, show the government that you can do it yourself as well. Then they'll say, if they can do it, let's try and beat them as well. They're embarrassing us. Maybe that will work. That's all I'm trying to. Thank you.
Right. Maybe before I go to others, do you want to respond, Donald? Or?
No, I was just thinking before Donald speaks, just a point of information. A few weeks ago, I spoke to the Minister for Investment and Economic Planning, Dr. Masharada, and he is basically saying about the incentives. If you want to bring in equipment and you are Zimbabwean, because foreigners that want to invest in Zimbabwe, because the government is trying to attract foreign direct investment, they are having the rebates, the tax rebates and incentives to invest in Zimbabwe, especially when they want to bring equipment. And my question to him was, what about Zimbabweans who are in the diaspora, if they want to come and invest back home or they want to bring in equipment? And his reply was, this is your country. If that is what you want, give us a proposal as a paper. They as a ministry have no problem with these rebates being extended to Zimbabweans. But they want a formal proposal that they can take to cabinet. And I think the good about Diaspora Focus Group is this then becomes the platform to generate that. and the ownership becomes that of the Zimbabweans within the diaspora, so that we don't have something going with so-and-so's name as if it's a down product, but it's a product that is coming from Zimbabweans as a collective voice to say this is what we want, and everyone can know about it and take credit and also exploit that particular facility that is there. And then just to my sister, I think what Mr. Nube here, we need to introduce ourselves.
Oh, yes.
I think in the Diaspora Focus Group, we interact with everyone, or a lot of people, tend to know a lot of people. I overheard a discussion just outside when they were talking about Generation X. Generation X being, it is high time that we as Zimbabweans, especially the able generation, stop blaming everyone else but ourselves. But take the challenge and say if every nation has liberated itself from whatever crisis was before it, there was a generation of committed people that stood up to do that. That is not easy, but it is something that can be done. So all the problems, all the solutions, the enabling environment, that facility that you want in order to do this should be our responsibility as Generation X. What are we doing about it? How can we do it? And this is the discussion that can be formulated through the think tanks and the human rights portfolios and others, so that people can agree how do you move forward as a nation or as a people under Generation X, rather than expecting people who are a certain age to solve our problems, or Zuma to solve our problems, or AU to solve our problems. That is the legal that I...
Thank you. Yeah? Did you want to say something, or you're okay with the comments? That,
just on the equipment issue as well. And he has brought in that dimension that, of course, if you're Zimbabwe, there are other facilities you can utilize. But generally, as a rule, if you have formed a company in Zimbabwe and you are importing anything that is constituting a capital goods that will reflect on your balance sheet as a capital equipment, the Revenue Authority grants you an allowance for that. You shouldn't pay duty to import the capital, because that's what you're going to use to generate revenue, which ZIMRA will then tax. Over a couple of years, you get an allowance to cover the cost of that capital.
right. There was one lady, and then Baba, and yeah. Oh, did you want to respond?
Yeah, I just wanted to, sorry, I just wanted to respond to her comment about, I think she was talking about political communism. And I think there are two different ways of it. What were you talking about then when you say it's government has to do certain things?
I said it would just be grounded in terms of corruption and everything. I'm not focusing on political. Political is one of the things, but if people are not confident to invest in a country, there's something wrong.
You are very right in saying that, and I agree with you. But I think, again, the onus is on us to change the situation, and I think the solutions lie with us. I mean, if we leave it for someone else to solve our problems, they won't be solved. The onus is on us to solve the problems. Yeah. You talk about corruption. I think when I grew up, it could have been there in Zimbabwe, but I don't remember a corrupt situation when I grew up in Zimbabwe. But I think it's because we sort of perpetuated ourselves. We perpetuate it. We have to stop it. You see? So that we have to stop it. The moment you start talking to someone on the side, if you're stopped by a police officer in Zimbabwe, and you think the best way to get to where you want to get to quicker is to give him $5, you are perpetuating corruption. Simple as that. So we should change it. So the onus is on us. So the onus is on us to change it.
Okay, then there was one lady, document, and another document. Can I start with? Can I honor the lady? Sorry.
Thank you very much for being on this platform. My name is Catherine Chese. I'm very much humbled to hear what is on offer for Zimbabwe. First I'll go to Mr. Charumbira. It's good because trade and investment is there back home, but it's on the formal sector. My question was now, for us who want to go on the informal sector, we know that back home we are always criticized people in the diaspora. It says Zimbabwe is not a dumping site. Everything that you get in the UK, you dump it back home, but little do they know that we've got investment in mind for our country. So I was asking, for people like us who want to go on the informal sector, what is it that can be given us? Because our hands are tied when it comes to the issue of duty and the like. I mean, I lay my hands on so many things, but if I think of taking those things back home, the duty, that's where the point is. Just as much as going to be a stepping stone, once I start on the informal, I know at the end of the day, like Mr. Mushonga said, one can open up a manufacturing company, one can open up a logistics company. So I want to find out, for us who want to do it on the informal sector, how do we go about it? And charity as well, you mentioned about charity. I just want to start up on charity, but how do I go about it?
Okay, thank you.
My name is Samkrange. If you don't mind, I'll speak from the seat. I think these talk shops, as we have here, is a good idea because you share ideas, which is fine. But I think we also, even in small grouping like we have here, we tend to shy, we tend to hide away from what we want to say because we are scared. We've got a gentleman from the embassy here who's given all these bright ideas about what investments you can do, etc., etc. What this lady here says is what probably half of us in here are afraid to talk about, which is the environment. Because if today me and my wife decided to go and start a factory in Zimbabwe, where there is more mangoes than anywhere else, in my opinion, we will not succeed. Why won't we succeed? Because unless we bring in a certain minister or a chairman of this and chairman of that from a ruling party, that thing will be stamped down, because the first question they will ask is, who are they? Some country, who is he? You know, politically already you are in a big trouble. You can take in as much investment as you want. If I went now home and decided to build a hotel in Noto or even in Zimbabwe, questions will be raised by the chairman of this party to say, who is this man? Right? So unless that environment is organized and changed, with due respect, say, you are sent by the embassy, employed by the embassy, but it is, and you may even be scared to go and express these opinions to your superiors because you will be victimized. But the truth is, Zimbabweans are very skeptical about investing in Zimbabwe now because of the environment that is there. Number one, we hear threats of the Zim dollar coming back. We hear threats of the GNU collapsing because one party wants to pull away, etc. How can you talk about investment? Who is crazy enough to want to? If I won a lottery today, would I take 2 million of my money and invest it in Zimbabwe?
No.
Would I? No. My wife would kill me to start with. So,
Okay. Right. Are you comfortable to respond to that one?
he might lose his job.
It's fine. I'll start with the informal sector contribution. In fact, what is the recommended way of starting up a viable business is doing it informally first, before the encumbrance of getting registered under the Companies Act and formalizing a business. ZIMRA also has a threshold under which you don't need to register with them for VAT purposes. So for a startup business, you are entitled to operate as a sole trader. You don't charge VAT, so you don't have to pay anything to ZIMRA. You don't have to report anything to the company's registry. And in some instances, you pay presumptive tax. For example, there's a certain figure which, if you have a hair salon per chair, there's a tax which you must pay to the figure which they've given. Or if you own a combi, there's a certain presumptive tax. If you're a cross-border trader, your tax is paid at the port of port. Then when you come in, you sell your goods freely. So informal trade is actually the liveliest sector in Zimbabwe at the moment, because even if you look at the agricultural sector, the farmers we're talking about, they are basically sole traders. They are not registered companies. They produce at the farms, bring it on the market, and then they make their cash from there. And there's also the Ministry of Small and Medium Enterprises, which has some facilities for informal traders. And then eventually, if you do decide to formalize the business, then you can get through to the company's registry and get proper certificates and the Zimbabwe certification. But there are ample facilities for informal traders, and also there are some associations of informal traders which help you to get into the business. I don't know if I fully answered.
Yeah, we need to chat after this is for time effect.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
The environmental aspect, certainly each business needs to be followed with the appropriate due diligence. But I'll give you the example, my sister mentioned Tirik, which is just a mile or two from my own village. So we see these opportunities lying idle, because we have 10, 20 hotels in the environs of Lake Tirik, which is Zimbabwe's largest inland water body. Yet you go there and you want to have a meal with bream. They may not have fish, but the lake is just there. But everyone is busy in Chivero, Darien. Fishing boats here may cost downwards of £10,000. The license, especially if you are a citizen, it's almost automatic right of access to the lake. And all you simply do is to transfer the fish from that lake to the surrounding hotels, as an example of a very small business which can start up with minimum, even no paperwork, except the agreement by the hotels to buy. So there are a lot of these fairly informal opportunities, in some cases small scale, but with a lot of possibility to grow in size. And so there's a need for that mindset which views what may be perceived as a problem as an opportunity that can be rightly exploited. Because it's when everything is now okay, those opportunities may no longer exist. And so many investors feel that the time to invest is now, while the opportunities still exist, and while you can actually be able to get these investments at below what they are worth in terms of market value.
Maybe before you sit down, I think there was this worry of how safe is their investment in terms of being linked to probably politicians within the area. How is that? Has that been solved? Can people just go in and then can they not be sort of like maybe meet some barriers where they'll say, okay, unless you meet that councillor or that MP, your investment is not going to work? Is that true, or is it us just dreaming in the diaspora?
What our role also is as an embassy.
Yeah.
You mentioned someone asked who is some kind.
Yeah.
If, for example, he has a brilliant proposal and comes and discusses through the embassy and says he wants to do this, our role is also to facilitate and say this person wants to build a hotel, he wants to put a fishing boat in Tirik, and facilitate that entire paperwork process.
Yeah.
The same exists if you were in Zimbabwe, if you were in Mudzi. You would also have avenues where you would get support for the projects which you want to do in the community. And we are here to represent all those arms of government and ensure those investments get through. And it's not all projects which require political intervention. Many of the projects which exist do not really necessitate, of course, if you're talking about large-scale mining projects which attract and require interdepartmental cooperation. Those are bigger projects where you must actually go through the Zimbabwe Investment Authority. But other projects which are of a minimal bureaucratic nature can be facilitated, and then we are here to ensure that no Zimbabwean fails to get through and find opportunities in the country.
Sorry, can I just interject, please? This is, according to Mr. Samkange, sorry, my name is Patson Muzua. I'm not a bit happy with this situation that we're talking about. One, the people that are asking to come to the embassy are not allowed by their statuses. Thank God he can go to Zimbabwe. I cannot go to Zimbabwe because I am in fear of, namely, CIOs, DOAS, COVA, and all these people. They know me personally, including your president, knows me personally, right? And you expect me to be walking into the embassy, and then I'll be jeopardizing all these other people who still needs papers, number one. Number two, what Mr. Samkange is talking about is the militias that have been taking over. All veterans have been taking over companies in Zimbabwe. We're talking, this security, is it now ripe that people can invest in Zimbabwe? We're talking about the ministers themselves taking over the farms and selling the produce to Sainsbury's, right? And this has been farmed by somebody. And later alone, Sabina Mugabe taking over all these farms in Glendale and all these things. We are saying, is it yet ripe for us to invest? Because we bought some houses, and I've been out of the country for 10 years, and then I'm losing part of these things. And because I don't have an ID card to go and buy a house today in Zimbabwe, they need my ID card to go and get the form and give it to the war veterans who own that land, so that I can get the stand. Honestly, let me be honest with investing in Zimbabwe. This is the security that the people are talking about. It's their security in this country, their security in Zimbabwe, and the security within the political spectrum in Zimbabwe, which is, I think, the ministers themselves needs to be reshuffled, including the beaches of the world, the MDCs of that world. They need to be, to rethink about corruption itself, because it's very rife in Zimbabwe, rife today as we're speaking. And I know we can invest. It's you people in Zimbabwe who will be telling us, bring the combis, and we brought the combis. It's you again who told us, bring the sugar, what do you call these other items that we're sending? And later on, we're mocked to say, you haven't seen Zimbabwe. I can't go to Zimbabwe to see the business, because I'm in fear of my life.
Right. Thank you, Mr. and for your contributions, which I think you have taken note of. But I think some of the issues that we mentioned might need us to invite the ambassador himself, isn't it? Because he is only responsible, on the commercial part, and might not be able to respond to the political. Yes.
You see, there are people here in the UK who try to do some business in Zimbabwe. Some will try to send cargo to Zimbabwe. But because of corruption in Zimbabwe, they could not get their, even the drugs. They will charge more than they could afford, or what they pay for. They could not afford to pay to get them. Because one container, sometimes I think it was charged about 50,000 US. He didn't get that much. He tried to see the minister, he tried to go there, he tried to go, all the doors were shut. So, how can you tell us we can do business in Zimbabwe when there is corruption everywhere? If you want to do business, you start from very low. You don't have that money. But you charge us because we send things from the UK.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just charity to help other people. Now you cannot, even if you get things here, you cannot send it to Zimbabwe because of corruption in Zimbabwe. The duty which they charge you, you can't afford it. And your shop, you don't have it as well. So how do you say we must go into the base now when the time is not there? Why can't we change the minister and start running the country?
Yes. Right. Can I?
Guys, don't think about it.
Yeah.
We must tell the truth.
Okay.
Yeah. We must change
Thank you so much, Sir, and for your contribution. Before I come back to you, can I just say that that was the reason why we had to come up with the Zimbabwe Diaspora Focus Group, so that all these things are captured. This individual who tried to send goods there, probably if we had known about it, we would sort of follow it through the channels that we have created ourselves as the diaspora community, and then we approach the embassy that we have a problem. But now it's difficult because I think the other thing is, as Zimbabweans, for example, I will be running my own charity, he is running his own and so on, and then we try to approach these ministers individually. And normally what they'll do is, you know, you people in the diaspora, can't you be united and have one voice? Yeah.
If I start my business, it's my business. You don't go there and say, let's start a business. That's what we are discussing here.
Yes, what I'm saying is coordinating these things. You have started your business. You need help, yeah, to have your things cleared. I mean, to have your, because now you're getting into the government where you need your things to be cleared. All I'm saying is, if we had a coordinated way of doing our things, especially when we know that the climate is difficult, this is why we had to create this kind of tripartite engagement to talk to him, to say, look, here is somebody who has been trying to sort of make sure that his goods get into the country. But now we're doing it at a policy level. What is your policy on goods that are coming from the people living in the diaspora? What is it? Is it because somebody could just have an attitude at the border there and say, okay, it's coming from UK, I'm not allowing it to come in. But yet we can talk about it and understand why is this individual. I find that probably it is just an individual who was just doing those kind of things. You wanted to say something, but
if they are calling for Zimbabwe to form business, they must make a policy. They must give us papers that if we do this, we can succeed. Don't just talk.
Can I also come in a bit? I said before, say that I overheard this Generation X element and the challenge that was given to Chairperson Mrs. Dube when she went to one of these big meetings, when someone said, you Zimbabweans, why do you want people to solve your problems rather than Zimbabweans solving their problems? The concept in Generation X is, it is our responsibility to make proposals about what we want, and those that are responsible for advocacy and representation should achieve the results of getting us what we want. And the purpose for the Diaspora Focus Group is, within the business portfolio, all the guys that are interested in business or having businesses or running companies come together and identify their common denominator problems. What are the challenges that you are having as Zimbabweans in making sure that you do business properly? What are the challenges you encounter at the border? What are the challenges of trust and credibility of even your agents and people that you are using at home? There are other people who have sent things at home and they've disappeared, even if it was through relatives. So once that happens, the government is saying, you write your proposal, like what Minister Mashagata did. You said, tell me what rebates you want. You are the Zimbabweans. This is your country. Once we make that proposal, then we should be talking about where is the response from our proposal. This is what happens here. All the business people, they go into CBI. CBI goes to government and advocates for business. When Cameron goes to the EU, he is armed with what CBI are saying as a voice, collective voice of the businesses. Now, if we work as individuals, that's when it goes back to what my sister was mentioning. It will depend on who you know. Somebody else comes to you and tells you that I have been able to get my stuff through into Zimbabwe. Go and see so and so. That person, because he doesn't know me, I'm from a village in Gwanda. I know no one in government. There's no way I can get my goods through the border in the same way that somebody else might be able to. So I think it is all about, we are here together, let's work together to make our proposals. And I think that's what Rob is talking about.
Can I take the last 3 questions, because we have to move from this topic. The gentleman at the back.
What I wanted to say was most of the views have just been sort of been brushed. But I think with regards to the Zimbabwe embassy, I think it needs to be more interactive and more engaging, particularly with things like information on opportunities. Because at the moment, I mean, I go to Zimbabwe on a regular basis, and it's very, very difficult to think of which areas you feel safe to invest into, unless if you are in the grave trade, political patronage or whatsoever. But from what all people have been saying, I think the main issue here is getting more information from the Zimbabwean embassy as to where people in diaspora can start engaging into. That's what I want to say.
Thank you.
Maybe the point I wanted to stress out first is the beauty which made us left Zimbabwe and come here. Has that been sorted first of all? Before we try to cosmate what we want to cosmate now. So if that beauty which made me leave Zimbabwe and come here has not been sorted out, we have not sorted out that, then we are not able to cosmate. Because you cannot put oil on a dead body, it will not stick. We have to sort that beauty which we left in the first place.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. There was the gentleman next to you.
I just wanted to say something about, you say you should make a proposal, then you send it to the embassy, then they will help you.
Part of the generation is we come together as Zimbabweans. We should be in charge of defining what we want, and we should demand it where it is due. It's not the embassy. I'm not talking about the embassy.
The problem which I faced is I had a project which I wanted to do back home, and I did a proposal. When I did the proposal, they saw the proposal. They didn't come back to me. When I tried to contact them, they said, no, you can't do it. But later I was contacted by somebody because he didn't know what to do. But the proposal was changed into his name. I don't know how they did it. So he wanted me to do the job for him now. But it was my proposal at first. So I don't know how to stop that from, because if I put my proposal and they change it and give it to his cousin or nephew.
No,
or
my point was, that's a challenge you face already. But if you are working within this Generation X family, you say, right, guys, my proposal is mine. How do I protect my intellectual property to make sure that nobody steals my ideas or tries to implement it behind my back? So there is someone else who comes in and look into how the issues of intellectual property are secured. And then the issue of you sent it somewhere, you expected deliverance from somewhere. That did not come. Why was that? Who is holding the bottleneck? Right. In other things, if Mr. Charumbira was not here, then I would be saying what Generation X is saying. Once you identify your problems, the next thing is how do you then make sure that you have an action plan to implement them? Right. Implementing those might come to what he is talking about. It might come to what Mr. Sam Kange was talking about. It might come to other things. But you are doing it as a collective. And it is clear to everyone why you are doing it. So even when you approach those guys and say to them, we demanded to have this incentive as Zimbabweans 2 years ago, you did not budge. So now for us to move forward, we don't see any reason why we need to continue dealing with you. Because if you are where you are and not delivering, then you better give way. So there is more that comes in, but all we are saying is, be in this kind of platform in Manchester, under the focus group, in whatever form, and come together, put your ideas together. Once you have those ideas, you formulate your action plans. Your action plans will then lead you into the direction of what you need to do to succeed in what you are doing. So it's not being prescriptive, but it's simply saying once you sit down with the other people within the Generation X, it's your responsibility, including getting the right people in government that must deliver. It becomes your responsibility.
Right. I'm sorry, I know that people still wanted to talk, but we are really running out of time, and we've got two more issues which are very important that we need to touch on. But if we still have got time, we can pursue these discussions, yeah, afterwards. Right.